New Orleans signed C.J. Spiller for something other than sitting on the fucking bench.
31 other passes that should have been intercepted with one.
So that's why I have David Johnson on my board higher.
If you're doing a live draft, wait till you're drunk to draft this guy. We welcome you to the Fifth Down.
What up, Fifth Downers? This is Johnny Slokes, and I got my partner in crime, K-Mill.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
You guys are here at the Fifth Down, giving you the extra down advantage. Today, if you guys haven't done your drafts yet, if you're one of those guys who likes to wait until the last minute, this is the show for you. We're going to be doing a little bit of last-minute draft prep. We're going to do some ADP Risers and Fallers. We got some pretty good news and notes today. K-Mill, how's your weekend been going, buddy?
Pretty good. Had 2 drafts, as you know, 2 leagues that we're in. They were very interesting, to say the least, and I got really pissed off today because some guy went rogue on my fucking league. So
yeah, dude, I seen that. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that dude pissed me the fuck off. Anyways,
we got some big news and notes today. We'll hit up that a little real fast before we get started. I'm sure you guys probably already heard Sam Bradford getting traded to the Minnesota Vikings. How do you see that playing out for the fantasy world?
I think that this is it's not like a huge upgrade for Sam Bradford, but I do like it. I do think it represents a little bit of upside because I do like the receivers in Minnesota a little more than I like the ones in Philadelphia. All I had was Jordan Matthews. So I like the move. I think it's good for Sam Bradford. And
I think it's good for Peterson, too.
Yeah, I think so, too. Having a competent quarterback, it makes the defenses have to respect the pass. But here's the real thing. A lot of people have been sleeping on Sam Bradford, even though, with all the controversy of him in Philly, how he demanded a trade. He's actually been a very accurate quarterback.
He got his wish. He's out of Philly.
Yeah, he's out of Philly. But the thing is, he was getting rave reviews from, the Philadelphia coaches. They said he was the, quote-unquote, most accurate quarterback at camp by far and away. So,
and Philadelphia actually got a really good deal for Bradford, too. They got Minnesota's 2017 first-round draft pick and a conditional fourth-round pick. So I think that they definitely got the better end of the deal.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think conventionally it's a stupid move, but at the same time it's a move that Minnesota needed to make to be competitive this year.
Well, the way I look at it is, they got Sam Bradford, but there's still a good chance they might not make the playoffs, If you don't make the playoffs and now you don't have a first rounder, you're really fucked,
Yeah, but think about a quarterbackless Minnesota Vikings team trying to compete with the Packers to win that division. It's not going to happen. So at least now they have a chance. If Adrian Peterson, I'm looking at him and I'm like, well, I'm guessing there's going to be a little bit of regression this year. Everybody says I'm crazy, but age is on the wrong side for him, and so it's going to primarily depend on how good is AP this year. If he's the AP from old, I think that this is a highly competitive Minnesota team. But if he's not, there's a chance this team could fall flat on their face.
I still think it's Green Bay's division to lose. Another quarterback.
I agree.
I think another quarterback made a move today. Mark Sanchez signed with the Dallas Cowboys a 1-year deal, so it looks like Dallas kind of won that little waiting war with Denver. Denver was trying to work out a trade with them. It fell out, and they're like, well, we're just going to wait for you to cut them then. And then they picked them up.
Yeah. They needed depth at the position. It seems like they're comfortable with Dak Prescott taking the reins, and it's good to have Mark Sanchez is the most accurate or the most secure quarterback.
I think he's a solid backup, though, for Dak, in case he does falter.
Oh, yeah. He proved in Philly that he's a competent enough backup. In fact, he's a better backup quarterback than he was a starting quarterback. So I like it. It's a good move for Dallas. Has some quarterback depth. But also, I wanted to point out, too, the other big quarterback news coming out of Philly was Carson Wentz is going to start. Yeah, he's going to start. It was previously assumed that it was going to be Bray, but it's actually going to be Wentz.
So that Wentz, I heard that Wentz went down, so it looks like Chase Daniels wasn't signed for no reason. He got some decent sized contract, so looks like he might get some playing time with at least a week 1 start, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
And 49ers named Blaine Gabbert the starter. We were all expecting that, so Kaepernick can do what he's been doing, just sit on the bench.
And during the national anthem, too.
Well, I mean, he's going to be riding that bench. Looks like Jacquizz Rodgers released from the Chicago Bears, but in bigger news, Justin Forsett released from the Ravens. So, and it's kind of an interesting time for them to release him because it does look like Kenneth Dixon is hurt. So right now it's just West and Buck again, Allen.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that news. It seems like a very peculiar move to me because I think at any position, Baltimore wants depth at that running back position, and now they go from like having probably one of the most crowded backfields to having one of the least crowded backfields. Like it's literally a 2-man team now. So
I think they have a chance of bringing them back for a cheaper price, though. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him back. I mean, yeah, granted, I don't really see it very likely of them holding on to 4 running backs, but it didn't really sound like they're too happy with Buck again, Allen. So I'm kind of surprised that they went the other way on that.
The injury news to Kenneth Dixon, and I've heard that Justin Forsett was having a great camp, which is also surprising. And I've also, like you said, that the whole Buck Allen thing, they haven't been pleased with him. I was very surprised by this news, and I'm still surprised. Do you see anybody picking Buck Allen, or Justin Forsett up? Because to me, I think there's a lot of teams that are actually watering at the mouth for a guy like Justin Forsett.
I mean, could you see him going to a place like Indianapolis or maybe even Washington because they lost they lost Keith Marshall for the year? So I don't know.
I think both of those places are really good destinations too. So I don't know.
Definitely something to keep your eye on.
Oh yeah.
Another running back cut was Ronnie Hillman. The Broncos released him today.
Yeah, the writing was on the wall for him after they drafted Booker. It was kind of the Booker can contribute on special teams, Hillman can't, so it was kind of a no-brainer by Denver on this one. Honestly, Booker is probably the most talented back on that team. Even though C.J. Anderson's the starter, I think that obviously Booker represents the most upside. But
I'm really glad because I just picked up Devontae Booker now. I think it was our work league. So
yeah, I hate the fact that you and me think so alike in fantasy purposes because I was hoping that I wouldn't have to waste a waiver claim on him because I have pretty high waiver privileges. I was like, I'll get him.
I was 11th, so I had nothing to lose. I was like, just go for it, you know.
Yeah. If you had a low waiver claim, I would just go for it. But I was hoping that I wouldn't have to use it, so I was like, and then you took him, you son of a bitch.
All right, so if we're sticking to running back news for right now, it does sound like Darren McFadden is going to remain in Dallas. They had some offers, but after considering it, they said that they're just going to leave Fadden on the Dallas Cowboys. So maybe if he can recover from his elbow injury, maybe he can regain that number 2 job. But I think I kind of still like Alfred Morris at this point over him.
Yeah, I think right now Alfred Morris has had a good off-season. I think that he opens the season as that primary handcuff to Ezekiel Elliott. Also a guy that has really, really, really like late round value ish. You know, if like say you are an Elliott owner, because I think he's a guy that could end up getting he'd shift to that 3rd down role, he's not really much of a pass catcher, but he does represent a guy who could get about 5 to 8 carries a game.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that situation plays out. I know we don't cover kickers too often on this show, but I think that this is something that's kind of relevant to know, especially if your league does play with kickers. Sturgis actually won up the job over Cody Parker for the Philadelphia kicking job. Not that that's offense I'm really worrying about too much to be scoring, but it's just if you are a Cody Parker owner, then you might want to drop him and get Sturgis. Yeah,
absolutely. That is very noteworthy, especially for drafts coming up.
And then last bit of news is it looks like Spencer Ware is going to probably start week 1 for Kansas City Chiefs. Jamal Charles was practicing with the reserves.
Yeah, I was really happy with that that news. I've been a big Spencer Ware fan since last year. I liked how he played. He's north-south bruiser runner.
And he could still be had relatively cheap in the draft.
Oh yeah. Right now, I think his ADP sitting right around like round 6, round 7. I love that.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that. I haven't seen him go much later than that. I haven't seen him go in double digits.
Oh yeah, no. I've been seeing him going sooner and sooner. Back like a couple months ago when I was doing mock drafts, I was seeing him like way late, like just strictly as a handcuff to Charles. And now that hit like I think the last draft we did, I think that he's been getting taken in the 8th round, 9th round. I've seen him taken as soon as I think in one mock draft I did. I think he got taken in like the 7th. So his ADP is definitely rising, and that's kind of what the subject of today is too. ADP Risers Fallers.
We both did our own independent research for this one. Finished the research by August 29th, so I went 2 months back from that, so from May 29th to August 29th, and I was using the ADP graphs that they have on Fantasy Football Calculator. That's how I kind of did my research. What did you do for it?
So I did a little bit of a Fantasy Football Calculator. There was like the gold standard as far as ADP goes, and then I did a little bit on Fantasy Pros, and then a little bit on like Yahoo and ESPN. So
you got a different variety of different sources that you used. We'll just start with the quarterback position.
Okay, all right, yeah, we can do that.
Does it sound good to you? I'm going to name off some of the notable risers that we had at the quarterback position. What I've noticed was Drew Brees, Eli Manning, Philip Rivers, Kirk Cousins, Tyrod Taylor, and Matthew Stafford were probably some of the more of the guys that rose in the last 2 months. And this is like typically a time of the season where a QB's ADP is going to be at its peak. They usually start lower, and then by the time it gets closer to draft day, people just are more anxious to take one, so they end up raising up a bit. Did you have any of those same names on there?
Yeah. Well, actually, 3 of the names that I keep continually see coming up on all of my risers is Drew Brees is a big one. I think people started out a little low on him, and then it just started building up on him. Also, Eli Manning and Philip Rivers, which isn't really surprising because of what what having them on your fantasy team represents. I mean, you're talking about all 3 of these guys were top 10 last year in the league. Drew
Brees in the last 2 months, he went from the back of the 6th round to the beginning of the 6th round. And I've seen him creep into the 5th round a couple of times. So I think that's kind of right around where he went last year, was like that 5th round. I think that's probably, if you really, really want him, where you're going to have to get him.
Yeah, right now, his current ADP sits at 5.09. So, I mean...
Where did you get that one from? Was that Fantasy Pros?
Yeah, that's from Fantasy Pros.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing him creep into the 5th round a bit. I'm not as big a fan on him as much as I was in the past, just because I do think he has a bit of a harder schedule. But, I mean, if you're looking for a guy that's consistently a QB1, even a top 5 quarterback, like, that's not a bad guy to target. I mean, I would try to get him in the 6th round, but a lot of other leagues, quarterbacks do tend to go a little bit earlier. So,
yeah, you can make a case for or against. You can make a case for or against Drew Brees. The case for him is that they have a horrendous defense, and they're going to be having to play. They're going to play from behind in games. They're already a pass-happy offense. So that's the case for him. Also, they play their home games in a dome, which we know that Drew Brees excels in domes. Outdoors and on the road, that's where he really tends to struggle. When I say struggle, I don't mean like struggle, but I do mean that there's like a little bit of a drop-off in fantasy points week to week. So that's one thing that deters me from him.
So do you think he's kind of like a guy that you would like to pair up with another quarterback for when he has like those road matchups? Maybe you guys you could look at as like a Matthew Stafford or Philip Rivers or something like a little bit later like that?
Oh, yeah.
Because Drew Brees has the advantage of having a Week 5 bye, so that's the one good advantage about him. Once he gets through that bye, like, you ain't got to worry about it. He got the early bye.
Yeah, I love those quarterbacks with early buys. I think that, honestly, if I'm going to reach up in the top 6 rounds for a quarterback, there's only 2 names that really stick out to me that I would well, three that I would actually want to grab, and that's Aaron Rodgers, because his ADP is sitting right at the back of the third right now. Russell Wilson, the back of the fourth, and then Andrew Luck at the back of the fifth. So I think out of all those, Andrew Luck represents the best value for where you get him at and what he's going to do this year. I think that Andrew Luck's going to have a huge year.
And if you're a guy that's picking at the back end of the draft, like 10th through 12th, Andrew Luck is a guy that you could target in the fifth round. I've done it a few times.
Yeah, I would love to have Andrew Luck on my team this year. I think that people are, I wouldn't say so much sleeping on him, but I do think that he will be a top 5 quarterback this year easily.
One of the guys that has risen the most in the past 2 months is Matthew Stafford. He was going May. He was going right in the middle of the 12th round, and he's climbed all the way up into the 10th round now. So almost 2 full rounds ahead from where he was at 2 months ago.
Oh, and you know what the great part is too is that's probably the steal of the quarterback crop this year. I think Matthew Stafford sitting right now. He's at the tail end of the 10th, and for what he can do, that's great value. I love that.
I mean, he has one of the more favorable schedules, especially in the beginning part of the season. So, I mean, that's another guy, if you want to try to wait out Tom Brady, you can match him up with either Drew Brees or Matthew Stafford, preferably Matthew Stafford because of where you can get him so late in the draft,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and another guy that's sitting back there, too, that you could even grab even later is Andy Dalton. I think that Andy Dalton's getting slept on a lot of people, and I think that's
Andy Dalton, on the other hand, we'll get to him in a little bit. But, he's a guy that I wouldn't mind having as a second quarterback, you know what I mean? I'm not as big on Andy Dalton as I think you are, but I think that he makes a fine second quarterback.
I think so too, but I do think that he will. Because think about his numbers last year. I know he lost a nice target, Marvin Jones, but I'm saying it right now. I think that Andy Dalton finishes the year maybe right outside QB1.
All right. Another decent-sized riser has been Tyrod Taylor. He was going 2 months ago at the back of the 11th. He's another guy that has climbed to into the 10th round, right ahead of Stafford, actually.
Yeah, well, think about what happened. I mean, this offseason there was even talk that the Bills might trade him to Denver. And so I was like, oh, well, shit, that's crazy. But, yeah, now that he got that new contract, I think that people are expecting big things from Tyrod Taylor.
He looked pretty good in the preseason. I've seen him using his deep ball pretty well. So, I mean, I really like the fact that he's a dual threat as well. That just adds to his value.
That rushing ability in a PPR setting is really nice.
What about you? What kind of risers do you have that we haven't named off yet?
Actually, that was about everybody. The guys that you named off were big ones. Another guy, too, Kirk Cousins, I think that, he's been...
Got him on my list.
Yeah, he's been creeping. And I think that he also represents pretty good value at the top of the 10.
Yeah, he's almost risen an entire round in the past 2 months. He was going at the back of the 10th, now he's going towards the beginning of the 10th. I mean, the one thing he does have in favor for him is he plays in the weak division. He has a pretty decent schedule this year. Especially towards the beginning of this season, he has a lot of easy matchups. So,
you know who I know we touched on this a little earlier too, but another guy that's slowly creeping up there too is Derek Carr. He's a guy, too, who actually his first 5 games of the season are like cakewalks. He plays so many weak defenses those first, 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, I know in week 1 he starts against the Saints. I think he might – I don't really know his schedule by heart, but I was looking at it beforehand yesterday. And, yeah, he does have a lot of decent matchups the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so he's honestly, if I'm making a little if I'm targeting a certain quarterback, and this is just strictly a strategy standpoint, I would take Derek Carr later, grab Tom Brady, right now his ADP sitting, you can probably get him in the 7th round, grab a Tom Brady, and then you have Derek Carr for those first 5 games or 4 games or however long you need him, and then you just throw Tom Brady in there, and then you already know what you're getting in Tom Brady.
I mean, even in our league that were there's 2 quarterbacks that went in the first round, believe it or not, I was still able to get Derek Carr in the 10th round. So I mean, I think people are kind of sleeping on him a little bit.
I think so too. I think that he's one of those other guys that represents a great value for this quarterback crop this year, and he's a guy that I was targeting in a lot of mock drafts when it came time to actually do the draft. Certain guys that I liked fell to me, and then I was like, I think I will. But no, he's a guy that, if you get Derek Carr on your team, I wouldn't be complaining.
Even another guy that people are starting to come around onto is Eli Manning. He was going at the back of the 10th or 9th round 2 months ago. Now he's creeping all the way to the middle of the 8th, so it's like almost a round and a half that he's risen in the past 2 months. I think that people are starting to see the value in that offense.
Yeah, two other guys that people aren't really mentioning. Ryan Fitzpatrick, his draft, his ADP was like non-existent because obviously he didn't have a contract. Now that he does have a contract, slowly creeping up there. It's not high by any means, but he's creeping in there.
All right. So is there any other quarterback risers you want to go over, or can we move on to the quarterback fallers?
Let's go to the fallers.
All right, some of the guys I have down as fallers, they got Big Ben, no surprisingly Tom Brady, Blake Bortles, and then we also talked about Derek Carr. I have him on here as a faller. Marcus Mariota on that, Ryan Tannehill, and Andy Dalton are some fallers that I have found noteworthy. What about? Is there any names that stick out to you?
I think the biggest one is Big Ben. I think that I was never really extremely high on him. I was never targeting any of my drafts, but I thought where his ADP was sitting beforehand was ridiculously high for a guy that is out of shape and injury prone. I just don't like that.
I mean, 2 months ago he was going at the beginning he didn't really fall that much, but he has taken a hit. The past 2 months he went from the beginning of the 6th round to the end of the 6th round, so I found like that's more noteworthy because I think it gives him a little bit of value. So, I mean, I know obviously he's a guy that does have issues staying healthy. He only has 230 touchdowns twice in his career, so that's another thing to keep noted. And as aforementioned Andy Dalton, he's outscored him 3 out of the last 4 years, and he can get him much later.
Exactly, and he's a guy that I don't mind falling because I think a lot of people are asleep on Andy Dalton. I would instead of taking a Big Ben early, I'd rather take a Andy Dalton late any day. Another guy though that you didn't mention though that did stick out to me was Matt Ryan. He fell pretty hard.
He's fallen almost 2 rounds in the past 2 months. He was going in the 11th round. Now he's all the way down to the 13th. So maybe some potential value there, but I really don't like Atlanta's schedule too much this year, or anyone in the NFC for that, or NFC South for that matter. But he's definitely a guy that you could have as like your second quarterback, not somebody you want to really rely on as your starter, unless you're one of those guys that likes to wait as long as possible to get a quarterback. But he's a guy that could easily bounce back, but I just don't like his schedule this year.
No, I agree. I don't think that I would set necessarily unless there was a lot of value to be had in the earlier rounds. I don't think I would necessarily go for Matt Ryan unless, like you said, he was like my backup quarterback.
I mean, even in my latest draft, like I already had Derek Carr, and I was looking for a backup quarterback. I seen Matt Ryan there, and I also seen Joe Flacco, and I was like, well, fuck, I'm just gonna wait and let someone else take Matt Ryan, and I'll just pick up Flacco as my backup quarterback.
Yeah, and another guy who's slowly starting to creep up in there after the great preseason he's had is Robert Griffin.
Yeah, I didn't really go too deep with all the picks. I think that the lowest I went was like Matt Ryan, Ryan Tannehill territory. That is an interesting name to bring up, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that he's obviously shown this preseason that he is very competent with the deep ball, and I think that's something that's going to play to his strengths. In fact, my prediction right now is that he's going to be the top post-Week 1 waiver pickup, Robert Griffin. I think he's going to have an absolutely awesome Week 1 matchup. I think he's going to score a lot of points. I think he's going to throw for like 2 or 3 touchdowns. I don't know about season long, but I know I have a feeling start of the season he's going to be a hot waiver wire pickup.
Yeah, that's probably definitely a name that we're going to bring up at a later date when we do our waiver wire show on Monday. for for people that might not have gotten drafted. So we'll go over that list on Monday. So definitely a name to bring up. Obviously, we know Tom Brady's been falling because of his suspension. But, a guy that I'm really glad has starting to fall is Blake Bortles, falling 2 rounds over the past 2 months. He was in the 6th round. Now he's in the 8th. Much better value there.
Yeah, my individual research showed that he was his ADP sat for me at the back of the 7th, which, I mean, that's really negligible. Top of the 5th, back of the 7th, same thing. But, I think that, I didn't like where he was going at all. I thought he was going way too high. Yeah, he threw for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns this year. But
had a lot of picks.
But his completion percentage was absolutely garbage last year. I think he completed less than 60% of his passes. So I think that the red flags are definitely there for Blake Bortles. So why the hell would I take a question mark at quarterback that early?
Over his short career, he actually has been averaging at least a pick every game. So I think I can't really put the number down because I can't really remember it. But he's a guy that needs to really cut down on his turnovers if he wants to take that next step up and lead his team to some actual victories, instead of just garbage time yards like he's been getting.
Yeah, exactly. This team is going to start now with this new defense that they have, or a lot of acquisitions they made. I think they're going to be a more competitive team this year. So I don't think he's going to be able to get away with the garbage time shit that he was usually doing. I think he's going to need to actually stay competitive, keep the team in games. I think the coaches are going to be a little more conservative with what he can and can't do because of that. Because if they're close in the game, they're not going to let him just bomb it downfield like they were letting him. Like, fuck it, go for it. So I think that his opportunities to just bomb it downfield at the end in garbage time and do Hail Marys and shit like that, those days are slowly becoming non-existent.
Another guy that was in the same draft class as him, Derek Carr, has almost taken just as hard of a hit. Derek Carr's went down a round and a half over the past 2 months. He was a guy going in the middle of the 8th. Now he's going at the end of the 9th. But I think, who would you rather have besides over Blake Bortles or Carr? Because I think I'm definitely leaning towards Carr on this one.
Yeah, I think that I like Carr more on this one, too. He's got Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree. He's got a budding tight end in Walford. And then Latavius Murray.
Improved offensive line.
Out of the backfield. Yeah, improved offensive line. I think that, I love Derek Carr. I think that he represents one of the best quarterback values this year. And honestly, if I was in the 7th round and you actually told me I had to take one of these two, I think I would rather spend the 7th on Derek Carr. I'm not saying I would. I'm just saying that if I had to pick between the two of them, I would definitely take Derek Carr over Blake Bortles.
I mean, he's a guy that could easily be like your second quarterback, but I would totally feel fine with him as my starting quarterback,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then if you're talking about, back in the 9th is where you first select your quarterback, like Derek Carr, I mean, think about that. You got your starter in round 9. Think about all those value players when other people were drafting quarterbacks. You already have a competent quarterback, and you have all those guys that you selected rounds 1 through 8, and so you got a pretty stacked bench.
And I know we already touched on it a little bit, but say you draft Tom Brady in the 9th, and you can go back and take Derek Carr in the 10th. You can have Derek Carr with a nice little schedule while Tom Brady's out, and then once Tom Brady goes out, you have some trade bait possibly because, Tom Brady will already been past his bye week, so that works out pretty well. Although I think the Raiders have like a 13th round bye or a 13th week bye, so that really works out.
They have a week 10 bye.
Week 10? Okay.
Yeah, it's week 10. But, no, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be like Tom Brady. We all already know he's suspended for the first 4 games. But if you look at any of these quarterbacks that you want to draft before the draft, do a little bit of research, just look at them. And if you look at a guy like Derek Carr, he's got an easy start of the season schedule. But if somebody's got a nice back half of the season, I don't have any examples right off the top of my head, but that would be a great tandem, too. Yeah, you were bringing that up a couple weeks ago, too. You want to get 2 quarterbacks whose schedules mesh well.
Yeah, I mean, really what you got to do is just look at their bye weeks and look at, hey, does this quarterback match both have good matchups during their bye weeks? And if they do, it's pretty compatible. Why not do it,
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I think one of the biggest faller, well, there's been two real big fallers. We'll go over the one we already mentioned, Andy Dalton. He was going middle of the 9th, and now he's all the way to the beginning of the 12th. What do you think the reason is for his drop in ADP? I mean, he almost fell 3 rounds.
I mean, well, it's probably the Eifert injury has something to do with it. He's probably not going to be back till week 4-ish. And then also A.J. Green's like really the only mouth to feed back there. He's got two running backs back there, and we all know Gio likes to catch out of the backfield, which is nice. But he lost Marvin Jones too, and I think that's kind of a big hit too. So I mean, really, he doesn't have a starting tight end. He has.
You're really just mentioning all the reasons why I'm not as big on Andy Dalton as you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think that Andy Dalton has come into his own. I think that A.J. Green kind of represents a beast in himself, and I think that Andy Dalton puts together a nice little string of events. Like I said, I wouldn't trust him as my starter, or I mean, if I traded my starter, I would feel comfortable having him my week in, week out quarterback. But those are red flags.
Would you rather have Andy Dalton or Marcus Mariota?
Andy Dalton.
Because Marcus Mariota's going a little bit after him. He's towards like the back end of the 12th. He's another guy that has been a big faller over these past 2 months, back of the 9th to almost the back of the 12th. I think that his rushing ability does give him a bit of an edge over Dalton, although there's also concern if he's a guy that likes to run, he could be an injury target as well. So.
Yeah, I think my bold prediction is I think that Mariota won't be a factor in the league 3 years from now. Ooh. I think that he's going to get hurt. He's going to prove he's an injury-prone quarterback. He showed it last year. He struggled getting back from injury. So I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm not high on Mariota at all. I think that he's a huge injury risk. He's undersized, and I don't like it.
All right. So is there any other fallers that we haven't talked about that you noticed in your study?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right, so we can just move right along. We'll go over to the very next position and go running back. There's quite a big set of running backs that have actually risen in these past 2 months. I think we'll just go, to an obvious one, I guess, is Ezekiel Elliott. Obviously, he was getting taken not in the first round 2 months ago, but that's where he's at now. That's pretty much, if you want to have him, that's where you're going to have to get him, because he was at the back of the 3rd 2 months ago. Now he's in the back of the 1st, so he's pretty much risen 2 rounds. Yeah,
everybody was really high on him from the get-go. Me, myself, I'm not a huge fan of trusting rookie running backs, but the thing is, you have to remember what AP did his rookie year. I could see something similar with Elliott this year. He's got a great offensive line. Obviously, they won't be airing it out as much because Romo's out, or at least I don't think so. I think that this is like
Aren't you a little bit worried about them stacking the box against them?
Yeah, it does represent a little bit of risk for me. I think Dak Prescott has shown he's competent enough. He's not like the situation with Todd Gurley in L.A. last year where he was constantly getting stacked because they had an incompetent quarterback. I think he represents a little bit more of a competent quarterback. But, yeah, I think that what we saw AP's rookie year is what we can expect from Elliott. But, yeah, his ADP is off the charts right now.
Aren't you a little bit worried that maybe that Dallas doesn't score as much touchdowns as what their offense is capable of because of the quarterback situation, and maybe that kind of limits Ezekiel Elliott's touchdown upside, especially if you're taking him in the 1st round? Wouldn't you want a running back that has the potential to get 10 touchdowns? Which I'm not saying he doesn't have that potential, because he definitely does, but there also is that risk where maybe they just don't score enough points for him to get those touchdowns, you know?
Well, let me lay it out here. I was never really, when everybody was going crazy after he got drafted by Dallas, I was like, I'm not comfortable spending a 1st-round pick on a rookie running back. There's so many better players that I would rather have than Ezekiel Elliott in the 1st round. There's a lot of great players. So it's not to say that he's not a good – but, yeah, you're right. I want a guy that I know can definitely get me at least 10 touchdowns, can definitely get me X amount of yards, definitely. And I haven't seen Ezekiel Elliott at the pro level for an entire year, so I can't completely judge his value. So that's, for me, I fear the unknown on him. I'd rather take a guy who's going right around there, David Johnson.
I mean, the thing about him is he is a rookie. And if you spend that first-round draft pick on him, yeah, he's probably going to return RB1 stats this year, most likely. But you also got to remember he is a rookie. He might hit that rookie wall towards the end of the year when you actually need him for your fantasy playoffs. I don't think that's something that people really foreshadow too much, but maybe they should be because, I mean, it happens to a lot of rookies.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. I'm surprised I haven't brought that point up yet. That's an excellent point. Yeah, that it was the same thing that happened to Amari Cooper last year. He was on an absolute tear at the start of the season, and then at the end of the season, he was dealing with an injury, and he just kind of fell off. But yeah, I mean, if Amari Cooper was able to sustain his numbers all season, it would have been incredible. But he wasn't, and that's kind of what I think too. And we're already hearing about injury news in the preseason, with his hamstring. So
even look at Todd Gurley last year hit a wall,
Yeah.
I mean, he was actually really good too. Oh, I mean, if you look at his numbers overall, it looks like he had a pretty good season, but he did kind of hit a wall towards the end of that year, and you're kind of man, I don't really want to rely on him in the playoffs, but I kind of have to because who else am I going to put in?
Yeah, he was the guy that last year he for like 3 or 4 straight weeks, and then he hit a wall where it was like nothing for a good while. Yeah, he definitely hit that rookie wall. I forgot about that. That's a great point. Another guy I actually want to bring up, the guy that we just mentioned, Todd Gurley, has actually been falling too.
Yeah, he's still been relatively high overall. I mean, he has fallen a little bit, but I mean, he's still got to spend close to a top 5, top 7 draft pick to get him. So I didn't really put him in there, but he has fallen a little bit.
Currently, in a standard 12-team format, his ADP sits at 107. So
yeah,
and I know I've seen it like as high as and I've seen it in some drafts. He's getting picked number 1 overall. So
yeah, that happened in our work league.
Yeah, I did. I was very, very surprised about that.
I was actually neutral on it because, I mean, it didn't really affect who I was taking anyway, so.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Well, we'll get to that when we get to that. Another guy, too, that rose up a lot, especially with the off-season news, was Lamar Miller when it was said that he was going to Houston. His ADP went off the charts, too. Yeah,
I mean, he's a guy that he was before not even going in the first round, anywhere near the first round. He's a guy pretty much if you want to get him, you have to take him in the first round, and I think for good reason. I really do. I'm actually pretty high on Lamar Miller.
Yeah, I am too. I wasn't at first. I don't know why. I can't give you an exact reason, but I just wasn't there on him. But actually, after I've been looking at it for a while, I love Lamar Miller. I just took him in our work league. I think that Lamar Miller is a great pick in the first. I think, honestly, my bold prediction is I think that him and David Johnson are going to be David Johnson, and Todd Gurley are going to finish the top 3 backs this year.
Yeah, I mean, I already made my bold prediction. I did actually pick Lamar Miller to finish number 1 overall, actually, and it's not really out of reason either. I mean, you got to think he only had 194 carries last year, and he was a top 10 running back.
Yeah, at this point now, the only running back I like more than Lamar Miller is David Johnson. First it was Todd Gurley, David Johnson, and then him, and now it's strictly Lamar Miller and David Johnson are my 2 favorite running backs in the league. So David Johnson's the only guy I like over him. So yeah, if that represents anything, and I think that David Johnson's going to have a spectacular season. And speaking of which, his ADP has risen a lot. You have to get him with I think his ADP in a 12-team format right now is a 3rd pick
1-8?
overall. It's 1-3.
Who you talking about?
David Johnson.
Oh yeah, he's conventionally a top 5 pick in almost every draft now. It seems like.
Yeah.
It seems like once you get to that 4th or 5th pick, you kind of got that decision to make, which actually you actually helped me make my own decision because you picked David Johnson, which I kind of figured you would because I know how high you are on him. But I was really about to take him as that 5th pick overall. I was like, I don't really have any shares of him anyway, so let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I know. I love that 4th pick because the thing is, when I look at it,
you got a lot of flexibility there. You know?
Yeah, you do, because presumably in your draft, though, the top 3 picks are going to be receivers, or if your league is smart, that's what their first 3 picks are going to be. So, and I knew that if any one of those 3 receivers fell to me, I was going to take them over David Johnson. But once they all went where I thought they were going to go, I was like, boom, David Johnson.
And about having that 4th overall pick, that is almost like the pick that can, like, pretty much set the trail for the rest of the draft for at least that first round. Like, if those first 3 picks are all receivers and your 4th pick you go receiver again, it could make people want to, like, well, all the top guys are gone, maybe I should just take a running back. But if, say, like, a couple of running backs go within those first 5 picks, people are like, oh, great, we have a lot of value falling to us with these receivers now,
Absolutely. Another guy, too, that we didn't bring up yet was another guy who's been falling recently, Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, we'll get into our fallers in a little bit. I actually have a lot of risers that we haven't even touched on yet, like a guy that I really have no shares of him in any of my leagues, but it's a guy that I really have started to come around on is LaShawn McCoy. He was going in the back of the 3rd round 2 months ago. He's now in the back of the 2nd round, so he's pretty much risen the whole round these past 2 months, and I think that it's for good reason. I mean, they released Carlos Williams, so maybe they think that he's going to get a lot more value, which he probably will because they are a pretty run-heavy team. But I'm really starting to come around on LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, for me, I've been high on Shady McCoy the whole offseason and everything. I loved what he represents in Buffalo. So this isn't surprising to me at all. I think definitely because Carlos Williams last year stole away some of his touchdowns that he could have had, and he did have a down year in touchdowns last year. So I think
he had like 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So. But then Carlos Williams had like 8 or 9. So I think this isn't surprising. You get rid of a guy like Carlos Williams that's stealing some of his touchdowns away, and now, boom, his ADP is just on the rise. Because you already know what McCoy's going to get.
When's the last time you were able to get McCoy this late in the draft, too,
That's true, yeah.
Usually it's conventional first-round draft pick.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, in a lot of my books, I was really high on Mark Ingram coming into the year, but I think I'm even higher on Shady McCoy. I think that I would definitely take him over a guy like Mark Ingram, maybe even take him over Doug Martin. Currently, Shady, from my research, he's actually got a higher ADP than Martin does.
Yeah, now he does, because we'll get to Doug Martin in a little bit. Another running back that is starting to rise over these past couple months is a guy that we're both high on, Latavius Murray. He went up pretty much a whole round. He's going to the back of the 4th. Now he's going in the beginning of the 4th. Do you still think that's a pretty good value for where you can get him, though?
Yeah, I think so, because assuming that if you grab a running back in the first couple rounds, think about that, and then say you grab a guy like David Johnson in the first round or, whatever, and then you come right around again, and Latavius Murray falls to you. I mean, think about that tandem. I love that.
I mean, if you're doing like a more balanced draft, like you go wide receiver 1st round, running back 2nd round, and then you can go running back or wide receiver 3rd round, and you can come back and get Latavius Murray as your 2nd running back. I think that he makes a great RB2.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that he's probably my favorite RB2 candidate in the draft, besides maybe a guy like C.J. Anderson.
Another guy that really hasn't risen a lot in the past 2 months, but he has risen a lot in the last 2 weeks is Jeremy Hill. 2 months ago he was going 7th pick, 5th round. Now he's still only 5th round, 3rd pick, but just 2 weeks ago he is being drafted at the back of the 6th round, and now he's risen all the way up into the beginning of the 5th, like I just said, So definitely some guys are starting to come around on Jeremy Hill. I think they kind of like his touchdown upside.
Yeah, coaches have been saying good things about him, and I do think that he's in for a nice rebound year. I don't think that he's necessarily a bad pick for any team. There is a threshold, though, where I would be comfortable and not comfortable taking him, though, so you have to gauge that. Don't take him too early. Don't be so high that you take him over a guy that's going to for sure outproduce him, because you got to remember, too, he is competing with Gio Bernard. So, but I just definitely don't. I'm not low on him at all.
Though a guy that's going actually a whole round after him, I think is a guy that I'd rather have is Jonathan Stewart.
The only reason I would rather have Jeremy Hill than Jonathan Stewart is the fact that Stewart loses a little bit of his workload because Cam Newton scored a lot of touchdowns. Yeah, exactly.
I understand that. I can get on board with that. I just kind of like the volume that Jonathan Stewart can get, especially if you're in a league where it kind of rewards some points if you get the carries. I know that's starting to become a thing in the fantasy world, and I really like it. I think it should have always been a thing. But I think that's the one reason why I kind of like Jonathan Stewart more than Jeremy Hill, although Jonathan Stewart does bring the injury downside, so that's another thing you have to consider. Like, you need a backup plan. And I think that if you could maybe pair both of those running backs together, like Jeremy Hill and Jonathan Stewart, that might not actually be a bad idea, unless you want to get someone who's a little bit later that's more of like a pass-catching specialist, because it's kind of where a lot of them are going is like the 7th, 8th, 9th round. You got all these pass catchers that you could possibly have a backup plan for Jonathan Stewart. Like guys like Sims, Woodhead, like players like that are kind of going a little bit after him.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Because I'm playing in a couple leagues with that format too, points per carry, or like just you strictly get points for volume.
Yep.
Yeah, I love a guy like Jonathan Stewart because you already know he's going to get a heavy workload week in, week out.
I know we brought it up on another show where he had like 6 straight weeks where he had at least 20 carries. So that's something that you kind of hope that he can repeat this year.
Yeah, well, another guy that's creeping up there for me right now that I'm getting really high on is Melvin Gordon. I've been hearing great things about Melvin Gordon, and I think
that's a guy we have not touched yet.
Yeah, and I absolutely love him. I have him in a couple leagues, and I am expecting good things about Melvin Gordon. I might have shot myself in the foot with that pick because if he has a year like last year, obviously I just wasted a pick. But I have a feeling that he's going to have a nice rebound year this year.
I mean, he's went a round and a half earlier than what he was going 2 months ago. He was going at the back of the 7th round. Now he's almost towards the back or the front of the 6th round. So he's definitely a guy that's on the rise, so to speak. And his counterpart, Danny Woodhead, someone that you could also take much later. That I think in most formats that I play in, I think I'd rather have Danny Woodhead just because of like the upside of him catching all these passes. We play in a lot of PPR leagues, so that's another thing you got to watch for. Is Melvin Gordon going to get a piece of that receiving load? Yeah,
that's a good point. That is a very good point. I'm also very high on Danny Woodhead too, but I think that Melvin Gordon. I think that he's going to get a lot of. He's obviously the bigger of the two. I still think that he definitely gets that red zone work too. I think that Danny Woodhead probably going to get you in a PPR setting. He's probably going to get you about average of about 10 points a week. I think a guy like Melvin Gordon will get you a lot more though, because I think that he's a guy that's been tearing it up this preseason. He's been getting about averaging about like 80 yards a game, and then a couple touchdowns. And he even I think the other night he caught a pass for a touchdown. So I think that he's a guy that could potentially win your league if you take a chance on him, get him on your team. I think that Melvin Gordon could definitely be one of those steals of the draft.
I mean, the thing about Melvin Gordon, the thing he has going for him is there's really nowhere but up for him to go. I mean, how much worse can you get than a season with no touchdowns? You got to think he's at least going to get in the end zone a few times this year.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how San Diego was talking him up, and they were expecting big things from him, and then he completely just got bent over last year. Yeah.
Some of the biggest risers that we haven't even touched on yet, there's 3 of them, actually. We'll go over the most interesting one, Arian Foster. Obviously, since the signing, he's been going nothing but north. He was a guy that was going 7th pick in the 8th round. Now he's all the way up in the 5th round. He's risen 3 rounds in the past 2 months. Do you really like Arian Foster in the 5th round?
He's just a huge question mark, and I'm not comfortable spending a 5th round pick on a guy that I have a big question mark on. There's so many guys going around that area that I'd rather have than Arian Foster.
That's where I've been consistently seeing him go is the 5th round.
Yeah, his ADP is. I mean, and I knew when he signed in Miami that his ADP was going to start flying up, and it did. Two things happened: Ajayi's stock went down, and his went up. So I think that I would rather get Ajayi later if you're really looking at something somewhat of a value there, because I'm sure that this is going to be a contested position all year for Miami, and I think that, to be honest, Ajayi could have. We all know Aaron Foster can't stay healthy. I think Ajayi could have his job by potentially like fucking Halloween.
You know, so far the early reports has been that Arian Foster looks like to be the lead dog to win 3-down role, actually. And like Ajayi was more of like a change of pace back. Do you see it maybe being like a thing where Ajayi can pass them up for those first 2 downs, and then they end up using Arian Foster for that 3rd down role? Because Ajayi has not had a very good preseason at all. He's been real bad. He had something like 18 carries for like 49 yards this preseason. I've seen him drop a couple of passes. I know he lost a fumble in the 4th preseason game. He's not having a good preseason at all. So I think that's another reason why Foster has been raising up so much, you know?
Yeah, I think so too. But the thing is, I think the biggest thing with Arian Foster is his health. I can't trust his health, you know. So I'm saying that and I think that he's one of those guys that we all know is injury prone. I'm saying if you grab a guy like Ajayi, he's going to be, if Arian Foster goes down, he's going to be thrust in that lead back role. And in limited work last year, I'm not reading too much into the preseason this year. I mean, I do and I don't. But those are all good points. I'm just saying I'm staying away from the Miami backfield completely. Like, I don't want to touch either of them.
Well, okay, I guess you just kind of just answered the question I was about to answer. I was about to say, if you are a guy that takes Arian Foster in the 5th round, are you potentially looking to draft Ajayi too later on in the draft, say like 7th, 8th round?
I think you have to. I mean, he's a back that you have to handcuff, because if you don't, he has such a potential to get injured.
All right, so another riser that's actually risen up pretty far is Duke Johnson, Cleveland Browns. He's went from the middle of the 7th to the end of the 5th even. Is that a little bit too much of a price for a guy that may or may not get the kind of workload that you're expecting? I know obviously he's a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield, and they're going to use him like that. But how much of a part of this run game do you think is going to be?
Well, I mean, the Browns have been clear since day one that Isaiah Crowell, the Crow, he was going to get the top 2 downs. He's going to be the rock carrier all game, and fucking Duke Johnson was going to get 3rd down and passing down work. So I think that, honestly, it works bad for both of them, but I think that Crowell's the better back to have because of the volume that he's going to get a game. He's a guy that's going to get at least, 10 or 12 carries a game. Duke Johnson really guaranteed that.
I think Duke Johnson does have a potential to get like between 10 to 15 total touches a game. So I think that's kind of where his floor is at.
Yeah, I don't know. After Crowell had that really stupid move where he like posted a picture of cops and whatever, and then there was like talk that he might even get cut by the Browns. I mean, afterwards he did everything right, and he's had a great preseason after that little incident. So I've heard great things. They said that he's been a nice downhill runner. So I think if you're just strictly looking at it from that, I don't like those situations where, especially from where you have to take him. Like, why would I want to take a running back that early that I don't know what his role necessarily is on that team?
I mean, I really do see him as like a change pace type of guy that can get plenty of work in the passing game, especially with Griffin as a quarterback. You think they are going to be doing a lot of dump-offs and screen plays, maybe use him in the slot a little bit. I mean, you think that he could be a guy that could get 70 catches, especially since who knows what they're going to get out of Josh Gordon. They do have a rookie wide receiver that has a lot of promise. You also still have Gary Barnidge, but I don't know how much Griffin actually uses his tight end, so that's another thing you got to keep in mind when you're drafting some guys like Duke Johnson and Gary Barnidge,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying that I'm low on Duke Johnson. I'm just saying that I think there's a lot of guys that like him more than him. But I think that, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I think Robert Griffin's going to actually have a nice, successful year. There's a lot of weapons in Cleveland this year.
You know, another guy that I know that you don't really care for because he kind of burnt you last year during the playoffs, a guy that's been on the rise is Rashad Jennings. He's a guy that was going early 9th round. Now he's in the middle of the 7th. Do you still like him in that 7th round, or is there other guys that you're looking at?
I just don't trust him as a runner, and I don't trust that he'll get utilized enough in that pass-heavy offense in New York. I just really don't think that he's going to – you shouldn't expect more than 8 points a game from him, if that.
Who are you taking? Are you taking Rashad Jennings, or are you taking Matt Jones? They're both right there in the middle of the 7th.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd say screw both of them. I'd take Abdullah.
You rather go that route?
Yeah, I'd avoid him. I think if I had
I think out of Abdullah, Matt Jones, and Rashad Jennings, I think that Rashad Jennings would probably be the safest pick out of the 3.
I think he has the safest floor, but to win your championship, you got to take some chances, and I think that Amir Abdullah still has a lot of that upside. Same with Matt Jones, honestly. I think I would take both of those guys over a guy like Rashad Jennings. I do think that Rashad Jennings is a safe floor, but I do think that guys like Abdullah and Matt Jones represent something of an upside pick. I think right this second, I would take Abdullah over Jones.
Who would you take? Would you rather take Jennings, Abdullah, or Matt Jones, or would you rather just wait like maybe a half a round to a full round and just take Derrick Henry? Derrick Henry's going at the back of the 7th.
Yeah, I like the upside that Derrick Henry represents. Also, you got a guy that like T.J. Yeldon that's consistently falling in that area too.
Yep. All right. Is there any other risers that you have listed as noteworthy that we haven't brought up already?
I think the biggest one recently is Christine Michael. He's going sooner and sooner, and for obvious reasons. That Seattle backfield.
You're getting a little bit higher on him.
Yeah, I literally have him in I think nearly all of my leagues. I have a little bit of stock invested because a running back can succeed in that Seattle backfield. So I'm just saying, look at it from the standpoint of like he's definitely gonna get the volume. And he's already had an insane yards per carry average in the preseason. So
something like 7 or 8 yards a carry or some shit like that.
Yeah, and think about it. If he gets it, he gets it. If not, well, fuck it, drop him or trade him later. I think that where he's going at somewhat of a value for potentially. There's a little bit of a risk involved because you might be wasting like an 8th round pick on him, but or even later, which I've been consistently getting him later. So, I don't know. I think that it's enough of a upside to be like, maybe I should just take a chance. Because that's around the area where you're pretty much taking handcuffs anyways, so you might as well.
All right. So, one guy that I want to bring up that we haven't brought up yet is a guy that's been rising quite a bit, too, is Giovanni Bernard. He was going in the beginning of the 7th round. Now he's at the end of the 5th round. Do you still like Giovanni Bernard at the end of the 5th round, especially since you got Jeremy Hill at the beginning of the 5th round? So, I mean, you could potentially get them both, but you might not. Or would you even want both of them? I think maybe you want to just take the guy that could potentially get more receptions if you're in a PPR league, but if you're in a standard league, are you just going to rather just try to get Jeremy Hill over him?
Well, I would probably rather have Jeremy Hill, just take him a little bit earlier than Gio. But the thing is, in a lot of drafts I've noticed, the one that consistently falls to me is Gio, so I take Gio. I wouldn't mind having either of them.
I mean, obviously Giovanni Bernard is a guy that I like, just the fact that he's my sexy flexy pick. You can use him. I like to use him in the flex. He's a guy that's finished as an RB2 all 3 of his years in the league in our PPR leagues. So he's a guy that could potentially just return as an RB2. I mean, he doesn't really have a touchdown upside, but he's a guy that could consistently catch the ball out of the backfield. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we'll go on to the running backs. Fallers, there's a couple of obvious ones, a couple that aren't as obvious. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell has been falling because of his 3-game suspension. I mean, yeah, it got reduced by a game, but on the other end of the spectrum, we got D'Angelo Williams has been a big riser. as his handcuff. He was going in the beginning of the ninth. Now he's in the beginning of the seventh, so keep that in mind. We already said that Freeman has been a faller. He's a guy that I know I've seen him go in the first round a couple times a couple of months ago. Now he's more towards the back of the second round. I mean, that's not really that surprising, to be honest. It seems like a lot of other people are starting to get a little bit lower on Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of obvious. He's another guy that I think could have his job lost by Halloween to Tevin Coleman. Last year, Tevin Coleman was supposed to open as a starter, and then, we all know the story. He got hurt, and then Devontae Freeman went on a fucking crazy tear. But, he's undersized. He's a competent pass catcher. I think that they're going to eventually shift him back to that role that he was originally going to do anyway with Tevin Coleman. Yeah, he was going to play primarily third down and, passing down roles. So I think that that's where he sort of belongs, because I think teams were catching on to him at the back end of last season. I think that the writing has been on the wall for Devontae Freeman. I own him in no leagues, and I don't want anything to do with him.
I mean, one good thing he does have going for him is he is actually pretty competent in the receiving end. He did have I think, 70 receptions or some shit like that last year. And Atlanta was actually one of the more run-heavy teams in the red zone last year, so he also has that working out for him, because he did prove he can get into the end zone. So, I mean, that's something that you also got to keep aware of, is that you got to watch out for that running back use when they get into the red zone. You got to start seeing how many carries is Tevin Coleman going to actually steal from him. Because Tevin Coleman, he got hurt at the beginning of the year, but he had the rest of the season to prove that he deserves more carries, and it never happened. So we'll see. It's definitely a running back situation that you want to keep an eye on.
Definitely.
All right. Is there a running back that you noticed that's been falling pretty considerably?
I think that one of the bigger ones is Jamal Charles, obviously. I think that, for obvious reasons, he's not even the week one starter. I don't know when he's going to be healthy. I think he's starting, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's starting the year on the unable to perform list, right? No,
he did get deactivated from the PUP list, but he's still practicing with the reserves.
Oh wow!
Since he's been deactivated from the PUP list, he's been practicing with the reserves. I don't think that his recovery is exactly where they want it to be yet. I think they're going to slowly try to ease him into the lineup before he takes command of that offense, if he does take command of that offense.
Well, and the same thing I was saying with another player, there's a threshold there too, because then there's, obviously I wouldn't take him where his current ADP sits. It's back of the second round. I wouldn't take him there. But here's the thing: if he falls enough, and you can get him an insane value, say he falls an incredible amount,
I know in our draft a couple of nights ago, he went the fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, if I can get Jamal Charles in the fourth round, maybe he misses week one, but it's kind of a, like a Josh Gordon situation. He's suspended for the first 4 games. It's kind of the same thing. If you miss him for the first 3 or 4 weeks, it's not so much of a big deal, because a healthy Jamal Charles. But the other thing that is concerning about him, though, is that he's losing that goal line work to Spencer Ware. So, are you really getting a guy that you think you're getting with Jamal Charles?
I mean, I think I don't have any shares of him. I have also shied away from him. Although, I mean, I was looking at him as a guy that could potentially be a top 10 running back, but I'm not really feeling that way about him anymore,
Yeah, absolutely not.
Another guy that I've seen that's been falling considerably is Thomas Rolls. 2 months ago, he was going at the back of the second round. He is now in the middle of the fourth. I think that's a little bit better of a value, especially since the emergence of Christine Michael, I think, has really pushed him down the draft board a little bit, and the fact that, he is coming off a dislocated ankle, and he looks like he should be ready week one, but that will remain to be seen of how effective he will be and how much volume is he going to lose to Christine Michael. I mean, we've all seen it before in the past, Christine Michael, he's getting all this hype, and then the season comes around and nothing.
Yeah,
so it's an interesting situation to look at,
Yeah, I couldn't have said any better.
Is there another guy that you want to bring up for Faller?
kind of an obvious one because of the suspension, but Le'Veon Bell, he's strictly falling because of the suspension because we all know what he's capable of as a runner. He's a guy that I'm still, like, I would still take him in the second round.
Are you still willing to handcuff Bell with Williams, considering we have to get D'Angelo Williams in the 7th round? Maybe even the 6th round?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if I would be comfortable doing that because you're essentially just wasting a pick because then when Le'Veon Bell comes back, I mean, maybe you keep D'Angelo Williams as a bench stash, but still, I don't know. It's for obvious reasons why Le'Veon Bell's falling.
From the research I've seen him, it looks like he's still going at the beginning of the 2nd round, which I really wouldn't want to take him there because that's like territory where he might be your first running back. But if you could find a couple of drafts where he tends to fall, like in the draft I was in, I got him in the 8th pick in the 2nd round. I like that a lot better because he could potentially just be your running back too. Say if you go, draft a running back in the 1st round, you know what I mean? I think that works out a little bit better. I think that's kind of like the strategy that you have to play if you're a guy that's going to do Le'Veon Bell. And I know D'Angelo Williams is going to be probably an RB1 while he's in, but how much work will he actually get after Le'Veon Bell comes back to warrant a 7th-round pick or a 6th-round pick? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if I can get him at the back of the 2nd and the top of the 2nd, I mean that's a big difference. If I can get him at the back of the 2nd, I think that I'm definitely more serious about it. But the top of the 2nd, there's still too many players that I could potentially take right there.
I mean, there's a lot, Adam, so that's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of receivers that I like at that top of the 2nd round that I'd rather have over Le'Veon Bell. But towards the back end of the 2nd round, a lot of those wide receivers that I like are already taken. You might be able to get like a Sammy Watkins back there, but I really wouldn't want to spend a 2nd round on Sammy Watkins, so I want to go Le'Veon Bell, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, another faller that I've been seeing that we're both really not too big on is Matt Forte. He's dipped into the 4th round now. He was going in the 3rd. And I think for good reason. I'm not real crazy about him. And I know we stated the reasons before. He could be losing some work in the goal line from Kerry Robinson. He could lose some passing work from Blau Powell. That's just a guy that I'm really not targeting in a lot of my draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you also got to think he's up there in age. He has a lot of tread on his tires. There's a lot of potential risk there. Like, what if he just completely falls off the cliff?
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Because, I mean, he is right around that age where running backs do tend to drop. What's the running backs that you've also noticed that's kind of going in like the same area as Matt Forte that's been falling?
I think that another guy that I think needs to be brought up as a nice like faller, but DeMarco Murray is going around that same area, and I'm not high on him either. I see him consistently fall a couple rounds.
You know, you read my mind where I was going with that, because that was the next name that I wanted to bring up. He's a guy that was going at the beginning, like the 4th round at one point, and now he's kind of going towards that back of that 4th. And I think he's falling for good reason. I think that a lot of that Derrick Henry hype is starting to get to people's minds. I'm not as big of a fan of DeMarco Murray either. I don't think I have any shares of him either, so I'm pretty glad that you brought him up. You know, another guy that's, I mean, if you look at it from a 2-month standpoint, he's a faller. But if you look at it from a 2-week standpoint, he's a riser, is Jeremy Langford. 2 months ago, he was going at the back of the 3rd round. Now he's got an ADP that's back of the 4th round. But if you look at the past 2 weeks, he was at the back of the 5th round, and now he was risen up a whole week or a whole round in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think now that people are starting to see with his preseason workload and everything that he's the unquestioned back to have. So
I mean, he pretty much got every single snap when the first team offense was out there. So you really got to love the way that they're utilizing him.
Yeah,
I just kind of wish that he would become a better receiver out of the backfield. He still seems like he kind of has trouble catching the ball consistently.
Yeah, and he's got to work on those fumble issues and, like, drop it. Yeah, like you said, he's been a kind of a butterfingers. And I also think that the Kadeem Carey injury helped him out. Less competition, obviously.
And obviously they released Quiz Rogers, so they ain't got to worry about him on 3rd down.
Yeah, I don't think that Jaquez Rogers is ever really a threat. I think they're comfortable moving forward with Langford and Carey, and then Howard's going to work in there too. So I think that I expected Jaquez Rogers to be gone from the moment training camp started.
It's really not that surprising. I did have Rogers as like the fourth in that pecking list right there, but I'm just saying I think that also just adds into effect the reason to justify his rise in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another guy that's starting to fall, and it's a guy that I'm actually pretty high on. I know you like him and don't like him at the same time, is Jonathan Stewart. He's dropped the whole round the past 2 months, but I think he has an excellent value for what he represents, because what he represents to me is a guy that could get 1,000 total yards and like 7 or 8 touchdowns. I think that's a really good value if you get him in like the 5th, 6th round. Like, you really can't complain for a guy you're getting right there that could have 1,000 yards on the season,
Oh, yeah, I've noticed he's consistently available in the 5th round. And honestly, he's a guy that I wouldn't mind having on my team. There's a lot of guys I like more than him, but he's definitely not a guy I can knock. I think that's the only thing I can really say about him.
If you're a guy that goes wide receiver heavy in a draft, you can have Jonathan Stewart as potentially, like, say you go 3 receivers and then 2 running backs, he could be your second running back, and I'm totally fine with that. Actually, I like him a lot more as a third running back, but I'm totally fine with him being my second running back on my team.
Yeah, absolutely, because you already got, like, your value at receivers, so now you pretty much got your net at running back, too. But, just for, instance, for a guy that's going around that same area, attack a little sooner than him, top of the 4th round, a guy like Carlos Hyde, I fucking hate him. Like, I won't touch him in any leagues because I think the 49ers have a rough enough schedule this year. I think that if they play some of the league's top defenses this year, I don't want to touch them.
Well, yeah, I think, man, he's playing at least 4 games against the Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. So that's not really good. And I know they have a lot of other tough games on their schedule. So, I mean, it's a good point to bring up that I don't really like Hyde where he's going, to be honest.
Yeah, if I have to spend a top of the 4th round pick on a guy that spent most of last year injured, and with a chip, I mean, granted, he does have the Chip Kelly offense working for him, but honestly, too, how confident is Blaine Gabbert as a passer? Obviously people are just going to stack the box against him. I don't like the outlook for Hyde at all.
Is there any other fallers that we haven't mentioned that you want to bring up? I think I can only think of one other guy. Is there anyone else that you can think of?
No, I think that'll probably do it. Maybe Chris Ivory, but that's not really. Oh, go ahead.
I got the guy that I seen fall considerably is Matt Jones. He was going beginning of the 5th round. Now he's going the beginning of the 7th round. He's fallen a whole 2 rounds these past 2 months. And I think for good reason. I think I didn't really like his value in the 5th round. I think he's all right in the 7th round, but even there, it's like I really don't want him on my team. I just really think that he's a couple of fumbles away from finding the bench. Rob Kelly looked really good in the preseason, and I think maybe he could be the potential back to own in that backfield, especially with Keith Marshall out for the season.
Yeah, and if you have to take him with like a back of the 5th, top of the 6th pick, I wouldn't do it. No way. There's guys going around him. There's a guy who, granted, is injury prone going around the same area, and that's Ryan Matthews, and I think I'd rather have Ryan Matthews than Matt Jones.
All right, so I think that'll do it for running back. I know there's not a whole lot of wide receivers that I've noted as risers, but there's a couple that I will bring up. Is obviously with the signing of Fitz Marshall has gone up from the back of the 2nd to the beginning of the 2nd. But do you really like him at the beginning of the 2nd?
To be honest, no. I think he's sandwiched in an area of like a sweet spot of receivers that I'd rather have more of him. Like, just for example, top of the 2nd, Mike Evans, right below him, Des Bryant, and then right below where Marshall's going is Jordy Nelson. And then even lower than that, Keenan Allen.
You didn't mention.
Yeah,
I'd rather have Keenan Allen over Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. All 4 of those guys are available at the same area, and I'd rather have all 4 of those guys over Brandon Marshall.
Another guy that's starting to rise, he's went up about almost a full, actually not really a full round, I would say about a half a round, is Brandon Cooks. He went from the beginning or the middle of the 3rd round to the end of the 2nd round. I still like him there because he could be a guy that could be a RB or wide receiver 1 but you could have him as your second wide receiver. I think I really like him as my second wide receiver.
Yeah, I definitely do. He's a guy that, for reference too, a guy that's going like right in the same area as Alshon Jeffrey, and I think I'd rather have Brandon Cooks than Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, Alshon Jeffrey I think does represent a lot of potential high upside with from like a reception and a touchdown standpoint. But he also brings that injury downside. He's kind of a risk. He's been the guy that was all banged up last year. I know he was able to stay healthy in the past, but it seems like recently, what have you done? You've been getting hurt.
Yeah, I don't think it's just the injury with him anymore. I think it's more of like his team's offense is horrendous. This whole preseason, I think they've scored out of 4 games. I think they've scored like 20-something total points. Like that's not good.
You can't really look at it from that standpoint. You really got to look at what was the starting offense doing while they were on the field, because you got to think that some of the backups will take on most of the workload in the preseason.
Yeah, very true. But I don't know. I don't like how this Bears offense looks. It looks sluggish, looks slow. I was really high on Jeffrey, and now I'm not so high on Jeffrey.
Well, you got to look at it from another standpoint. They do have a pretty good schedule. The whole NFC North has a pretty good schedule, so that is one thing working in their favor. Have you considered that at all when you're looking at a guy like Alshon Jeffrey?
Yeah, I did look at that too, but I think that the Bears offense this year, I don't know what I'm fucking looking at. I don't like this system at all. But yeah, I did look at some of those. They do have a nice schedule. Actually, as you brought up, the whole NFC North has a great schedule this year.
There's 3 guys, 3 or 4 guys that I really want to mention because of how fucking much they've risen in the past 2 months. And one guy is pretty obvious is Dante Moncrief. He was going beginning of the 8th round 2 months ago. He's now all the way up into the beginning of the 4th round. 4 whole rounds he has gone up in the past 2 months. I think his ADP is out of control, and he is nowhere near being a value where he's being taken. I mean, he's being taken almost as high as Hilton. Hilton's going in the beginning of the 3rd. He's going at the beginning of the 4th. I think that's insane. He's the second receiver on that team. That's how you have to look at it.
In my research, my individual research, I've actually noticed that T.Y. Hilton, the gap's even closer. T.Y. Hilton's consistently going at the back of the 3rd, and Dante Moncrief's going at the top of the 4th. So, yeah, pretty much you're either like, oh, wow, like, you have to – they're going, like, right where the other one's going. Now, I think that it's because Dante Moncrief is obviously a big red zone target for Andrew Luck, but the thing is, I think that ADP is out of control too, and that's not even close to a value. I think that pick represents a lot of risk. There's guys going around him that I think I'd rather have. Like, for instance, we just mentioned T.Y. Hilton, but Demaryius Thomas is going right at that same area, and Jarvis Landry too.
But would you rather have here's another number 2 receiver. Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Eric Decker or Dante Moncrief? Eric Decker is going at the back of the 4th round, but you got Moncrief going at the beginning of the 4th round. But Eric Decker has proven that he's been a pretty consistent red zone target pretty much his whole career. Yeah, Moncrief, he did show some flashes of some touchdown upside with Luck last year, but Hilton had a pretty down season last year, and I think that maybe he's the guy you got to look at to have a bounce back season.
Think about this: a guy that is a number 1 receiver for a team is going at the same area that Moncrief and Decker are going, and that's Jeremy Maclin. I would rather have him over both of those guys.
Yeah, well, yeah, a good point. I know he kind of plays on a team that doesn't tend to throw the ball as much, and I think that's a reason why he's going where he's going. I think that his ADP is justified.
I think his ADP is justified, but I'm saying though, if I'm looking at like my second wide receiver on my team, and I have that. Let's just say I have the 4th round, 6th pick, and I got my choice of Moncrief, Maclin, and Decker. I think I'm taking Maclin.
Well, who do you think is going to get more touchdowns, Eric Decker or Jeremy Maclin?
I think Eric Decker gets more touchdowns.
And don't you think that there's a possibility that Eric Decker could get just as many yards as Jeremy Maclin? I mean, they were both right around that 1,000-yard mark last year.
Yeah, That is a good point you bring up. That's a tough one. I still think I like Jerry Maclin because I think that he can match Decker on touchdowns. I think that he really can.
The one upside you have with Maclin is if you play in a league where you get bonuses for long touchdowns. I think he definitely has the edge there over Decker. Decker's more of a guy that's going to score inside the 15-yard line. So that is one way you could look at it. Eric Decker, he was at one time 2 months ago going at the beginning of the sixth. He's now at the back of the fourth. So, he's another guy who's starting to lose a little bit of value because his ADP just keeps creeping,
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
Obviously, we're both big on Michael Floyd. He has gone up a whole round this past 2 months. He was going at the beginning of the sixth. Now he's at the beginning of the fifth. Seen him go in the fourth a couple of times. I think I still like him right where he's going, though.
Yeah.
I could consistently get him as my third receiver on my team. That's what I like about him.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about him at all. And, where he's going to, I think that's about where he needs to go because he's not going to be the super, target vacuum.
He's not super consistent either.
No, he's not. But the thing is, Arizona's got a lot of mouths to feed, and I think that he's going to be the biggest mouth. But at the same time, he's not a super target vacuum like a guy like Keenan Allen, yeah.
He says, he's going to have his weeks where he's a stinker,
Oh, yeah. He'll have his goose egg weeks for sure.
A guy we haven't mentioned yet that's ADP's gone way up, and for good reason. He was thought to have been suspended for the whole year. Now it's only 4 games. Is Josh Gordon 2 months ago? He was still being drafted, but in the 12th round. Now it's all the way up into the middle of the 5th. I don't know if I really like Josh Gordon in the 5th, but I do look for him when I'm in that 6 to 7 round range is where I like to look for him.
I've had him consistently drop to me in round 8, and that's where I've said that I'm comfortable taking Josh Gordon as the 8th rounder of the pack at 7.
Yeah, right now what I've seen on Football Calculator, if you look at the PPR settings, his ADP right now is 5.06, right there in the middle of the 5th round.
Yeah,
if you got to get him there, I don't really like him as much, but like you have said, I've seen him consistently fall well past that point. So he's a guy that could potentially be a guy that could lead you to a championship if he returns to form, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely that one of those really make it or break it picks. I think that he has huge upside, and if you get him in the 7th or the 8th round, you could just trade him down the road, or at worst case, if another pot thing happens or if he gets injured, just drop him. Think about it. You're not riding your whole team on him. I hate him in the 5th round because think about that. You're probably getting your 3rd receiver at that point. So I don't like him there. But if I can get him,
I like him much more as my 4th receiver. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Another guy that's risen a lot this past 2 months is Marvin Jones. He's gone up 4 rounds in the past 2 months. He was being gotten consistently in the 9th round, 9.08 is where he was getting taken 2 months ago. Now he's all the way up into the 5th round, and I really don't like his value in the 5th round, to be honest.
Yeah, depending on where you can get him. He's a guy that, in my mind, I've actually gotten a lot higher on. I actually drafted him the other night. He's a guy that I've gotten really high on because I really don't think that Golden Tate is going to be that presumed, number one, all-powerful, be-all, player. I think that it's going to be more of a situation that's in Denver where, Sanders and Thomas, a 1A and a 1B. And I think that's what it's going to be. So,
the way I look at it is I think that Matthew Stafford is going to try to spread the ball around to different receivers because what he's been talking about lately, he thinks that the Lions' offense is going to be a lot harder to stop because he's not going to consistently target one receiver throughout the season. He's going to try and really mix it up between guys like Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Antoine Bolden, even Eric Ebron. You got Theo Riddick, who's also a guy that's gotten 100 targets last year. I don't see his role really diminishing too much. So, I really don't really like a whole lot of receivers from Detroit, actually. I kind of think that I like Theo Riddick. I like Matthew Stafford because I know he might not really know who he's going to target, but you know that he's going to be the guy still getting probably 600 attempts. You know, you can't really think that Detroit's going to have a real good running game. So you really got to think that's still going to be Matthew Stafford's show, especially with Cooter saying that he's going to rely more on Stafford like they were in the past. You know.
Well, think about it this way. I don't necessarily think that Golden Tate, his volume is going to diminish at all. I think that if anything, they both go up. They both benefit from each other. I think that I actually like the situation in Detroit because, especially for the receivers, Tate and Jones, because you got not great receivers, but they're good enough. And a guy like Matthew Stafford, who gives that volume, you know, he's going to have 600 attempts in the season. So that right there, I mean, think about it. They're going to get a nice amount of targets each game, and you got to think about just from a target standpoint. I think Marvin Jones gets enough of a share to where he's going to be nice and fantasy relevant, and I like him in the. I mean,
I could see Marvin Jones getting 100 targets. I could see that. I do think that Golden Tate's going to get more targets than him, but Marvin Jones's targets I think are going to definitely be deeper down the field than say a Golden Tate, who's over the last year you've seen his average depth per target pretty much be cut in half. So that's another thing you have to consider is Golden Tate going to get those yards after the catch like he's been getting, you know?
Yeah, I like Golden Tate. He's going to be more of a possession receiver, and then I think Marvin Jones is going to go with more of that deep threat TD upside.
I know we touched up on the receivers that have been rising pretty well. Is there anyone else that you want to mention?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. Some of the droppers, the people that have been falling, I mean, some of them make sense. Like we touched on Golden Tate. He's 407. Marvin Jones is a whole round later. Who would you rather have out of Golden Tate or Marvin Jones? Marvin Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm higher on Marvin Jones just because I think that he has the potential to get more touchdowns.
I mean, it makes really good sense of why Julian Edelman's falling. Obviously, he's going to be missing Tom Brady for a quarter of the season, so he's fallen a whole round to the back of the third.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about Edelman. I think that he's still getting taken way too soon. He's a guy that's not even on my mind, really, unless I can get him at
he's nowhere near my radar.
Yeah.
Kelvin Benjamin, he's fallen a little bit, not anything worth mentioning, though. Jordan Matthews has fallen a whole round over these past 2 months, and I think he's going to continue. He might even fall even a little bit later now that Sam Bradford has been cut, or not cut, but traded.
Yeah, that's not surprising, though.
Another guy that's fallen almost a whole round is Alan Hearns. He's went back of the fifth to the middle of the sixth, almost the back of the sixth. Manuel Sanders has fallen a whole round. He was going back middle of the fifth to the end of the sixth round almost. So, I mean, do you think that he's a guy that's going to be due for a little bit of regression from last year?
Yeah, I do. I do think that he's due for some regression for sure.
I mean, you got to think Denver's probably going to run the ball a little bit with Trevor Siemian as the starting quarterback. Now they traded Mark Sanchez. You really got to think this is probably going to be a running team.
Yeah, to be honest, for a lot of reasons, I think that Denver is going to be a team that I think the guy to target there is Demaryius Thomas. I think that he's going to be the center, the focal point, really. Him and C.J. Anderson are going to be the focal points of that offense.
Another receiver that's been dropping considerably, and for good reason, Devontae Parker. I don't think he's really on my radar anymore. It seems like Stills has actually passed him up on the depth chart. And you really got to be wary about a second receiver on that Miami offense. They usually don't produce two receivers, so maybe we should have seen that coming.
Yeah, I tried to warn you about that one. But, yeah, I knew you were really high on him. I started, after you hyped him up, I started getting on the hype train on him, and now I'm kind of off him too. I think that there's actually a lot of guys, too, that have fallen. Kenny Stills is a nice deep threat. So, yeah, and I think that Devontae Parker is a big problem because he can't seem to stay healthy.
Yeah, he's always had some injury issues ever since he came into the league, and he's fallen all the way into the 8th round. I mean, at that point, he's just like a lottery ticket, you know? I think he definitely has more upside than Stills, but you gotta worry about the volume, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I'd be comfortable maybe taking a late round flyer on Parker if he's still available in like the ninth round. I think I would do that. He's a nice little bench stash because maybe he does get it together and because Kenny Stills is pretty much just warming the seat for him if he can get healthy and stuff like that. So.
We'll see if he starts improving his play once he gets healthy. Is there any receivers that we haven't mentioned that have been fallers in your mind that we want to mention?
No, I think we kind of hit them all.
All right. Well, we'll try to go through these tight ends here. There's not a whole lot on this list that I went through. I don't know how in-depth you went with it. Obviously, a guy that's been rising that really hasn't been in the news a whole lot is Gary Barnidge. He was going in the back of the 8th round a couple of months ago. He's now always full round higher in the back of the 7th round. Are you at all worried about maybe his target share in that offense with the RG3 thrown to him?
Yeah, I'm extremely worried. I think that he's going to be more of a touchdown-dependent tight end because that's where he was primarily getting utilized last year. But I think, honestly, there's too many mouths to feed. Robert Griffin III has a nice little backfield with Isaiah Crowell, Duke Johnson Jr., and Corey Coleman, Terrell Pryor. And when Josh Gordon comes back, I think that kind of spells somebody's going to get some regression.
Another guy that's been rising quite a bit is Antonio Gates the past 2 months. He was going the back of the 12th round, 1208, to the back of the 9th round, so he's went up pretty much 3 rounds now. Do you think people are buying into the fact that maybe they're going to try and get him his touchdowns that he's trying to get to break that record, that tight end record?
I'm not buying in because of the fact that he just can't stay healthy.
I mean, he was healthy for the most part last year. I think he did miss one game, and he obviously had the 4-game suspension. But he's historically been a guy that's been missing time over these past few seasons. So, yeah, you do have to worry about his health.
Yeah, that sort of thing doesn't get better with age either. He's just going to get worse and worse. His body is deteriorating. I get it, but I just don't think he can stay healthy for a full season.
So you don't like him at the back of the 9th at all?
I think, yeah, because tight end's a position where I'm either going to get one earlier or I'm going to get one really late. So I think that I like him if I could get him in like the 10th. But then again, there's also guys like Zach Ertz who I don't even know how much I like Zach Ertz anymore because I'm still processing the Sam Bradford news. But yeah, I think I like where Antonio Gates is going. But the thing is, you just got to understand that if you draft him, you're gonna have to get somebody else.
I mean, I don't like him because I don't like to have 2 tight ends, and I don't really see him as a tight end 1.
Yeah, I think he's going to finish outside there. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Another guy that has risen a whole round the past 2 months is Martellus Bennett. He was going in the back of the 11th, now he's at the back of the 10th. I mean, is it crazy to think that he can be successful as a backup tight end in this league? Because I honestly don't understand why he's going in the 10th round. I really don't. Or even the 11th round, for that matter. I just don't. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. People are getting this vision of Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. I think those days are long gone. I just don't see it. I'm not buying into it.
I'm not either.
I think he's going to finish. I think he's honestly going to finish with less than 5 touchdowns. If you feel like he's worthy of being on your roster, then yeah, by all means, draft him. But in my opinion, I'm not touching him with a 20-foot yardstick.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Man, you're brutal, man. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I wouldn't touch him. Another guy that's right there too.
The Giants didn't want him. The Cowboys didn't want him. The Bears didn't want him. Nobody fucking wants this guy. Like, Patriots are willing to take a chance on him, but whatever.
Well, and another guy that's going in that same area, and that's in like even earlier than Bennett, a little earlier at the back of the 10th, is fucking Jimmy Graham. Why are we wasting time on this guy? He just had a serious surgery, and that saps a lot of speed. I think Jimmy Graham's career is done.
I think he could probably vote a little bit of value if he could still use his size in the red zone. I think that's the upside that people are looking at with Jimmy Graham. But I'm saying Martellus Bennett doesn't even fucking start. Why is he being drafted?
Yeah.
You know? For all you Martellus Bennett truthers, I feel like you're going to get your heart broken this year.
Yeah, that's true. It sounds like you got a lot of malice in your heart for those people. But another guy too that we didn't talk about yet that I'm seeing him go way too early in a lot of drafts. I know you did too, but fucking Jared Cook. Is he even the starter?
You know, I heard the GM say that Richard Rodgers is the starting tight end for the foreseeable future this year and down the road. So I think they actually gave him a contract extension as well. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Look out for that
Cook
situation.
Has a higher ADP than Rodgers is. In fact, Rodgers isn't even on it. Doesn't even have an ADP because he's not getting taken in a lot of drafts.
You know, I do think at this point though, I'd probably stay away from the entire Green Bay tight end situation. I really just don't want. I want neither.
Yeah, same here. I don't want to touch either of them.
I'm saying if you're a guy that just drafts one tight end and you need like Richard Rodgers as a streamer for a bye week, I can get on board with that. But why waste the roster space when you can rather have like a running back or a receiver, you know, or a second quarterback?
Yeah. No. And while we're still on risers. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, we're almost done. I only had like 5 risers that were on my list. Barnage and Gates and Bennett were all, and then another one is Dwayne Allen. I was feeling him for a while. I'm not really liking where his ADP is going, so I'm really not on board with him. He is, he's in the back of the 11th, so it's not like it would kill you. But I think I'd rather just keep on waiting at that point, you know.
Yeah. I don't know, though. I don't really like a lot of guys that are going after Dwayne Allen because you got Witten, who has fallen for obvious reasons.
I mean, I think I'd rather have Ebron. He's going after Allen. I think, honestly, I'd rather have Jimmy Graham, who's going right around his area.
Actually, Jimmy Graham's got a considerably higher ADP. I didn't even get numbers on Ebron because he's not even getting average drafted. If
you look on Fantasy Pros, it'll go like 30 or so tight ends deep. Ebron's right there in the 14th round.
Oh, I only read like 15 deep. But yeah, I know. I agree with you on but Graham, you have to get him considerably earlier than Ebron.
Not necessarily. I was looking on Fantasy Pros, and he was about the beginning of the 12th round, and you got Dwayne Allen at the back of the 11th, so they're right there in that same area, and I think I'd rather just take Jimmy Graham over him, you know?
Yeah. I guess you're right. I honestly don't want to touch either of them. I think that the latest I would probably, like the last tight end I would actually consider taking before I just thought it was a lost cause, maybe Zach Ertz.
Well, see, I really don't mind Zach Miller, really, and he's going later than both of them.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't do a lot of research on him, but he is also another nice little acquisition.
I mean, the way you got to look at it is there's at least 100 receptions from that Chicago tight end position last year between Bennett and Miller, and now Bennett is gone. So maybe you could get into that 70 to 80 catch range. I mean, that's not really out of the question for him to get.
Yeah, and
you're trying to look at his upside. I mean, from his downside, he kind of came out of nowhere last year, you know, and you really don't have a whole lot of information about him. He kind of went AWOL for 6 years. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, the Bears must feel pretty good about him, though. They traded Martellus Bennett, so.
Yeah, they must. And then also, too, you got a guy in San Francisco, Vance McDonald, who I think represents a nice safety net for Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah, I know we touched on him in some other shows. I don't really have any more risers to speak of. You just want to move over to the fallers?
Get it.
All right, some of the fallers that I have down here, obviously Tyler Eifert. He was going at the beginning of the 5th. He's all the way at the end of the 8th. And I've seen him actually go all the way towards the end of the draft in a couple of drafts. So, I mean, I think some people are kind of staying away from him because there's a potential for him to miss the first month of the season. And he's really not a target monster either. So I think that his ADP is coming down for good reason. Is there any other ones that's all I really want to go over for Eifert. Is there any other tight ends that you noticed that have been dropping?
Oh, well, I was actually going to bring Eifert up as well because, I mean, it's the biggest travesty. You still have to get him in the 8th round.
I mean, I really don't like him there, you know. I
hate him there. There's so many more tight ends. Like, for a guy that could potentially miss the first 6 weeks of the season, I'm not touching that at all. Like, that's why would you waste an 8th rounder when I've been consistently able to get a guy like Josh Gordon in the 8th round? Why the hell would I try to get a guy like Eifert who's guaranteed to miss at least half the season, or maybe not half the season, but at least the first
half the fantasy season?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's like half the fantasy season.
Like 6 games would be pretty much half the fantasy season.
Yeah.
If you're playing 13-week regular seasons,
Yeah, the only other noteworthy guy that I've seen fall, though, is Kobe Fleener. I think that people are starting to get a little lower on him because his ADP was way high, and now it's starting to
getting out of control, and now it's starting to come back to a reasonable level. I 100% agree. I mean, he was a guy that was going. I've seen in a few drafts going in like the 5th round, and now he can be had in like the 7th round, maybe even the 8th. You've got to feel a little bit better about that.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better about that, definitely. Yeah, where I've been seeing him go is right in the 7th round, which I would be about comfortable maybe taking a shot with Kobe Fleener in the 7th.
Is there any more noteworthy tight ends that have fallen in these past 2 months?
I mean, like we were talking about Jason Witten for obvious reasons. He's a guy that really, to me, only has like really great value when Romo is in, because we know Romo likes to utilize him. I don't know how Dak Prescott is. All I know is last year when Romo went out, Jason was predicted to be a top tight end, and he ended up just shitting the bed. So I think that he gets underutilized without Romo.
Yeah, I mean, I really wasn't on board with him because of his age and for the fact that Romo was out. So he really wasn't on my radar, so I didn't really look into his ADP too much. But a guy that I have noticed that's been falling a little bit and probably might even fall a little bit more. How do you feel right now? If you had to draft tonight, how would you feel about Zach Ertz beginning of the 9th round?
Yeah, that's tough because I just said, I admitted I hadn't looked into it a whole lot. I did know that the Bradford trade went down, but for me, I still think though that he's going to be a nice safety net for a young quarterback. And he's a nice red zone target. I've heard great things in the preseason and everything like that. So I still think that his ADP is about on par. What about you?
Yeah, well, he's really never been a touchdown guy. I think he only had like 2 or 3 touchdowns last year. So I was starting to come around on him as a guy that could potentially be a bounce back, or like a guy that could step it up a notch, and maybe because I thought maybe his touchdown total would have to go up. But now I'm a little bit concerned now that Bradford's not the quarterback. And it looks like I don't really know how his connection is with Chase Daniels, who's going to be starting week 1. I do have Ertz in a couple of my teams, so I am a little bit concerned about that. I think like the 9th round is really not a terrible spot to take him, but it's really not a round that I like looking for tight end. Like as you said multiple times, if I don't get those top-notch tight ends, I kind of just like to wait it out and kind of play chicken with the whole position,
Yeah, I think with a rookie quarterback, there's going to be a lot of checkdowns, and I think that right in the 10th round is like my sweet spot for Ertz. If I can get him in like the 10th, I think that's negligible for me. I'll take him in the 10th.
I don't know if he's able to be had there, but I mean that would be pretty good value, I think.
Actually, the research I did, his ADP was sitting at 10.02.
Yeah, was that Fantasy Pros?
Yeah, that's Fantasy Pros.
Yeah, on the football calculator, he was 904. So it really kind of varies a little bit from site to site. And it will also vary from league to league, especially if you play in a tight end premium league where tight ends get more points per catch than receivers. That actually might boost his value up a little bit too, because he did have I think 80 catches last year.
Yeah, very, very true.
I played in a couple leagues where if you get 1.5 per catch for a tight end, that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, that is. That's very valuable.
Is there any other fallers that we haven't mentioned that you want to bring up?
I think that's it for me.
All right, so it looks like we are drawing close to the end of our show. I really hope that you guys really take in a lot of what we put in during this off season. We decided to do this show for the true hardcore fans that haven't done their draft yet. We hope that maybe if you listen to this, you'll utilize a little bit and take their ADPs into account, especially with all the crazy news that I've looked up today. I think that does change the landscape a little bit. So please give this show a listen. Follow us on Twitter, SitDownFF. And obviously, please subscribe us on iTunes. Leave us a review. It's been a while, man. We need. I guess no one was getting turned off when I told them that we don't have the money for hookers. So.
Oh yeah, well, I can't believe nobody bid on the hookers. I would have totally done the hookers. Yeah.
All right, man. You seriously, you need to get on Twitter and help us out, man.
I know. I'll do it. I'm coming around. My wife uses Twitter, so I'm gonna start doing it. I'm gonna technologically adapt, so to speak.
All right, so it looks like that'll do it for today's show. Monday we'll go over some players that maybe weren't drafted in some drafts, and it'll kind of serve as like a waiver wire show. We want to kind of do waiver wire shows on Tuesday because I know a lot of you guys' waivers hit on. I'm going to be doing the shows on Monday. That way they're available for Tuesday when those waiver wire picks are due. We're going to try and do that every week this year. So might want to tune in for that one. It's going to be a busy week next week.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm ready for it, though.
Any last words?
Hey, give us a like on iTunes, and appreciate it. We love doing these shows, and we hope you get some good information out of them, too, because you're the target audience. We love you guys.
All right, so that'll do it for today's show. Peace out, Fifth Downers.